Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another video. My name is Tom. Thank you so much for joining me here today in my office. It is about 3:49 in the morning, and I had some motivation this morning to get up early and try to get a lot of things accomplished. There's a list that kind of grew at the end of last week, and I'm going to try to be positive about it. And I'm going to try to do my best to get it all taken care of. Now, you're probably wondering why on earth am I sitting next to this noisy rack of equipment. This is our primary server rack. This is also our internet DMARC. This is where our internet connection comes into the house. I am in my office upstairs. And essentially, I'm not going to go over all of this gear unless there's interest in it. You know, if you leave me a comment down below, if you want to know how this is interconnected and configured, what all this stuff is, I'll be happy to do another video. This video is about this particular server right here. This is a 40 plus minus terabyte storage server that is running a version of Ubuntu server, and as you can hear, it is the sole source of noise in this household, because if I do this and let it turn off, you will see the grandiose difference in volume. So what this video is basically about is we're going to take this server out of the rack, we're going to look inside of it, and we're going to see what I mean? We're going to see what we can do to make this quieter. Now, there's a company out there called Noctua that makes really silent computer fans, and I don't know why computer manufacturers, specifically small form factor manufacturers like these 1U servers, don't use Noctua fans out the door. I guess it's more pricey, and you know, these things are designed to be used in a server room in a data center, and you don't really care about noise because, well, I think in a server room, you know, it's allowed to be noisy. But this thing is installed here in my office. Now, what I did discover just by kind of, you know, moving my ear around the rack is that through these little vents in the front here, you can't hear the fans that are immediately behind the drives. So if I take one of these drives out, right behind them, back there is the back plane that all of these drives connect to. Behind that back plane is a row of fans that goes all the way across. And they're literally there to draw air in through these holes, across the drives, and then into the rest of the server where the processors and the memory is and any other cards that you might have in there. Now, I don't hear much noise coming out of here, which tells me that that row of fans that's in here is relatively silent. Now, they do make kits that you can replace all those fans as well. But what I'm interested in the power supply. So the power supply sits in the back of the server, and it's literally located where this power cable is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the camera back. I'm going to put you right here on my desk. What I'm going to do is I'm going to slowly move this rack out because it is actually running. You know, our network is actually online. I'm not going to take it off for this. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to slowly maybe move the candle, you know, unless we want to burn stuff down. I'm also going to turn it a little bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the power cable out of this server. Now, this is one of these servers where you have to unrack the server to get the power supply out. There's just no other way to get to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause here, and I'm going to unrack this thing, and the next time you see me, it's going to be sitting behind you here on my desk. So this is the power supply that I pulled out a little bit. I was able to unplug the connections here as well as the connection here to get it out of this tunnel. And most power supplies and servers like this are hot swappable, meaning that if there's two power supplies, you can actually pull one out while the system's running, put it back in, and it'll work seamlessly. This one's a little less capable of being maintained while it's running because it only has one power supply, but it also has this pigtail back here that has the connections for the motherboard there and the back plane here. So this this server, you know, has to be taken out of the rack, has to be shut down, and has to be pulled out for service. So what I'm going to look for is I'm going to look for a part number, which I believe that's it there. And I'm going to see if I can get replacement fans. These fans here are relatively quiet. They're not too shabby in terms of noise. I'm sure they could be quieter, but 95% of the noise is coming from these two babies right here. Okay, so the reason that these two fans make up most of the noise is, you know, the skinny tube here is pretty long, and these two fans here have to draw all the heat out of this, and they have to pull in cooler air from this area here, and they have to draw it through the tube and then out. So essentially there's negative pressure inside the power supply. And I could pull this out a little bit more, but I think the power supply ends right here, so you can kind of see how long it is. The pigtails are here, and if I push it back in, I don't know, yeah, you can kind of see it here, but it's not visible there, but you can see it there. So yeah, there it is. So you can see it moving there. So it's a pretty long tube that these two fans have to exhaust. So they spin very fast, very loud, and there's absolutely nothing you can really do about it. And if you look here, this is an 80 plus power supply, which means it's power efficient, and it is pretty efficient. This server does not draw a lot of power, nor does it really get hot. Even under load, these fins are relatively cold. I just turned the server off a few minutes ago, and nothing in here is warm. So there's no heat loss, at least not much. And even when the server is doing its thing, these very rarely spin up. Now, in the configuration of this server, you can go in and tell these fans to run at full speed or at a relatively lower speed so that it's not that loud. This guy, on the other hand, he's the culprit that we have to take care of. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a few pictures of this, and I'm going to look around to see if either A, I need to replace this power supply with something a little bit quieter, or B, disassemble this whole thing, you know, take a couple screws out, and then unhook these fans, and then put in new fans. These are 40 millimeter fans, and Noctua makes 40 millimeter fans as well. So we'll see. I don't know if I'll need double stacked fans. These are double stacked too. So you can see there's a fan on this side, and there's a fan on this side. So, and what I like about this is that they just sit in here, and you can pull these out. There's no mount for them. The lid keeps them on when it's closed. So it's kind of nice. So there's, once again, a view of the server. And I feel the need to point out that this system is not very expensive. If you're curious about how these systems work. And if you're interested in pursuing, a career in IT, any form of IT, you should start with something like this, because this will teach you not just about the hardware, but it also teach you about what it takes to, set up one of these, to configure it for whatever purpose it needs to be. And then, you basically go from there. And, doing maintenance like this also helps you, kind of learn, like, oh, what's this? What's that? The power connectors, oh, why is there so many, pigtails on this one power supply? Why does this motherboard need two, connectors, and why does this only need one? That's one of the things that you can get the answers to. And also, this server is not new by any means. I mean, if you know what these are, good for you. This right here is my Ubuntu installation, which actually I was thinking about putting right here, because this server has internal USB ports. However, it won't fit. So that unfortunately has to go back to where it was, which is right here. I'll put it on the bottom, it's fine. Doesn't care. But these ports right here are old school PS2 ports that you used to have, purple was keyboard and turquoise was mouse. And yeah, if you know what this is right there, good for you. And if you know what that is, I commend you, because I don't know too many systems outside of servers that actually use this port. It's called a VGA port. It's for video. And then this one has 2 gigabit network cards, which I use. I have these in a configuration where the server can use them both simultaneously without causing problems on the network. And also, this has a little riser right here. You can see the slot, the PCI slot, and then there's two holes there that you can add cards into. So this is a pretty cheapo server. I think I purchased this for about $90 on eBay. And I think I spent another $75 or so on 96 gigs of RAM. These discs up here were the most expensive part of the server, because there's 4 10 terabyte. I think those are Seagates. Yes, they are Seagates. Which gives the server 40 terabytes of capacity. And then this little guy back here, this flash drive, is the boot disk. This is what allows the server to actually run Ubuntu. I think this is a 64 gig flash drive, if I'm correct. It might be, I can't tell. It might be 32, I don't know. Can you see it there? Does it tell you? It doesn't matter. Anyway, the point is that, to get into this is relatively easy, and all you have to do is just, start somewhere. So if you're interested in getting into IT, I highly recommend opening up one of these servers, buying it, opening it up, and then also setting up a home network. Now, this is version, I think, 7 of my network. I've had several pieces of gear. I actually used to run a Cisco-based network that I recently decommissioned because the hardware was pushing, 16, 17, 18 years old. And, I wanted new, faster, better, and unify for the win. This is Ubiquiti Networks. I have a Dream Machine Pro on the bottom there, right above the patch panel. So don't look at this guy in the middle there. That's the Dream Machine Pro. And then above it, I have a 24 port gigabit switch. And I just ordered today on eBay a 8-port fiber 10 gig switch from Ubiquiti that should be here this week. Okay, so one of the things that I did not explain very well in the last clip you just watched is what exactly this server is doing for me. So behind me, you will see my server dashboard, and I actually recorded this a little bit for you guys so you guys can see it in action. This part right here on the left-hand side, the green text, is actually a script that is running. It's essentially running a tool that clones the data that's stored on the server with what's on the cloud. So in the cloud container, it basically verifies, it does a check, and then it'll synchronize the data across. Any data that's on the server that's not in the cloud will get copied up, which is actually what it's doing here. You can see some of the latest videos that we shot here. It says YouTube channel data on the very bottom for transferring. And you can kind of see that the max speed I'm getting is about 4.6 megabytes per second. And that's pretty much it. The server acts as a middleman because I can't write directly to the cloud. I have to write to something here. In other words, I have to put data on the server here to store it. And then once it's off of my laptop and it's stored on the server, I can move on while the server does its thing and backs up the data to the cloud. It's not really a backup, it's more of a clone, because at some point I free off the data on this server. And on the right hand side, you kind of see the server's dashboard, if you will. This is a tool that is available in Linux. You can install it. It's called BTOP, and it gives you a pretty nice graphical representation with processor up top, storage here in the middle, network on the bottom, and then on the right, in this little tree right here, are all your processes that are running and how much CPU they're taking up. So you can actually make sure visually that your server's not running away from you. So kind of a neat tool. Now, for those who are asking themselves, do I need something like this? You know, I guess the answer to that is yes and no. If you're one of those people that has an incredible amount of files, or you're creating YouTube videos or whatever, and you have all of that data stored somewhere, you know, like an external hard drive or a USB stick or something, you have to be careful with that, because those, you know, those types of disks are susceptible to damage. They can be affected even by something like static, and you could lose your data. So if you're kind of, you know, concerned about your data and you want it to be safe and it's irreplaceable, especially if it's something you've shot, or, you know, a wedding, you know, data set for pictures or whatever, you know, then you want to consider having the means to write that data to the cloud. This setup will do that. It's, you know, it's a little overkill, you know, and this is more like small, medium business grade. You could easily, you know, do the same process with a Synology, and something a little bit more, you know, graphical that allows you to configure it. You know, instead of using the command line here, you could actually do something with like clicking the mouse and getting it to do the same thing. Either way, in some ways it's a costly process. You know, this does cost money. Writing data to the cloud is getting cheaper and cheaper as the cost of drives goes down in time, but it's still pretty expensive if you have a lot of data. Now, I write about between 8 and 12 terabytes of data to the cloud, so that's kind of my data set that I maintain. I clean stuff off once in a while, you know, I make room for new data, but as far as this goes, it works for me. It's worth the money, in my opinion, to make sure that, you know, if something were to happen to this house, to this location, that all I would have to do is buy another computer, set up shop someplace else, and then restore all of my data from the cloud as I need it. So it is a pretty good system, if you ask me. So that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching. Until next time. Bye bye.